In a small Northern California town, a deadly confrontation shattered the stillness of an early September evening. A man armed not with a gun, but with a bow and arrow. What followed sounds like something out of medieval history. Yet it happened in 2023. Tonight, we unravel the case of Glen Stevenson, a convicted felon on probation, who stands accused of impaling another man with an arrow during a violent encounter in Redding, California. This is a story of murder by arrow. On September 1st, law enforcement in Redding responded to reports of a disturbance at a residence. By the time officers arrived, they discovered 46-year-old Salvador Rabago suffering from a devastating injury. He had been struck and impaled by an arrow. Despite medical efforts, Rabago could not be saved. His life ended in a way that few could have imagined in modern-day America. The alleged assailant? 63-year-old Glen Stevenson, a man well known to local authorities. Stevenson had a long criminal history, stretching nearly 4 decades, filled with burglary, drug-related charges, and illegal weapons possession. He was prohibited from owning firearms because of his felonies. But the ban on guns didn't stop him from resorting to another deadly weapon, one far less common in modern crime, a bow and arrow. To understand how we got here, we need to look back at Stevenson's past. His criminal record paints a troubling portrait. Starting in the 1980s, Stevenson racked up charges ranging from burglary to narcotics possession. Through the 1990s and 2000s, more arrests followed. Illegal weapons, parole violations, and multiple stints in prison. Each time, he was released back into society, only to reoffend. In fact, at the time of the arrow killing, Stevenson was already on probation. Part of his probation conditions included a strict prohibition on firearms ownership. But nowhere in those terms did it specifically mention bows or crossbows, legal loopholes that some convicted felons exploit. Authorities now say Stevenson may have been using this technicality to his advantage. Neighbors reported that Stevenson often seemed unstable, sometimes aggressive. For many, his arrest didn't come as a shock. It was almost expected, just not in this bizarre and brutal way. According to investigators, the September 1st incident began with some kind of disturbance, possibly an argument or altercation, between Stevenson and Salvador Rabago. The exact cause of the confrontation has not yet been released publicly. What we do know is that Stevenson armed himself with a bow. Witnesses described hearing shouting, followed by silence, and then the shocking discovery: Rabago struck with a single arrow, mortally wounded. Police quickly apprehended Stevenson at the scene. Unlike many violent crimes, there was no escape attempt. Officers say Stevenson was taken into custody without incident, but his weapon of choice left both investigators and the public stunned. An arrow, after all, is not an impulsive weapon. Unlike a fist, a knife grabbed from a kitchen drawer, or even a firearm fired in the heat of the moment, a bow requires intent. It requires drawing the string, taking aim, and releasing. The act itself suggests premeditation, however brief. Stevenson is now being held without bail in Shasta County Jail, facing murder charges. His long criminal history will likely play a critical role in court proceedings. Prosecutors could argue that Stevenson's violent tendencies were a ticking time bomb, inevitably leading to tragedy. The community of Redding has reacted with a mix of shock and resignation. Some residents expressed disbelief that such a bizarre and medieval-sounding crime could happen in their town. Others, familiar with Stevenson's past, say they aren't surprised. One question looms large: could this crime have been prevented? Critics of California's probation system argue that Stevenson should never have been free in the first place. With nearly 40 years of run-ins with the law, his release back into the community was, to many, a gamble that ended in bloodshed. Cases like this raise troubling questions about the criminal justice system. How do you monitor felons who can no longer legally own firearms, but who can still access other dangerous weapons? Is banning guns enough when alternatives, like bows, crossbows, even homemade weapons, remain available? There's also the broader issue of rehabilitation. Stevenson had decades of opportunities to reform, yet his path led to more crime, more violence, and ultimately, a brutal murder. His case is not unique. Across the United States, repeat offenders represent a significant portion of violent crime statistics. The weapon in this case may be unusual, but the cycle, arrest, release, reoffend, is tragically familiar. As Glen Stevenson awaits trial for the murder of Salvador Rabago, the story of murder by arrow serves as both a chilling reminder of human violence and a sobering reflection on systemic failures. For Salvador Rabago's family, the focus is not on the weapon or the legal loopholes, but on the loss of a loved one, a man whose life ended in a violent and unimaginable way. For the community, the question remains, how many chances should a repeat offender get before the system intervenes decisively? And for the rest of us, the image lingers, a 21st century crime committed with a weapon that belongs in the past, yet still capable of ending a life in an instant. This is the story of murder by arrow, Probationer Impales man,